Good morning, guys. Well, maybe not good morning for you, but good morning for me. Anyway, I just wanted to go over this study guide that is looking a little blurry right now. Hey, also, last test before finals. That's exciting. Okay, let me see if I can't get this to clear up a bit. Nope. Okay. First question. Identify the center and radius of the circle given by the given equation. Okay, so if you guys remember, it's x plus h squared plus y plus k squared equals your radius squared. So right here is our center, and we take the opposite values. So that would be a -8 and a +7. And for our radius, we're going to have to take the square root of 121, because remember that it's squared, which is 11. All right, identify the center and the radius of the circle given the graph below. So I have gone over 5, 6, 7 places. That is my x value. And I have gone down, so -2 places. And for my radius, I'm just going to count over 1, 2. So my radius is equal to 2. All right, write the equation of a circle with a center at -4, -1, and a diameter of 2 rad 34. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in this part. I see that it's a -4. So in my parentheses, I'm going to put a +4. And I see that it's a -1. So in my parentheses, I'm going to put a +1. And then I need to figure out my diameter. Well, if I remember, 2 times my radius equals my diameter. So 2 times r equals my radius. So I'm going to divide by 2 and divide by 2, and I'm going to get my radius as equal to rad 34. But remember, for the equation, it's your radius squared, so it becomes rad 34 squared, which just equals 34. Okay, write the equation of a circle with a center of 3, -4, and a circumference. Okay, so again, since they gave me the center, I'm just going to fill this part out. And I'll figure out my radius in a second. But the center is a +3 for my x value, so I'm going to put a negative or minus. And then it's a -4, so I'm going to put a +4. Okay, well, circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So I'm going to go ahead and take 8 pi, which my circumference is, and solve. So divide it by 2 pi and divide it by 2 pi, and I get my radius equals 4, right? 8 divided by 2 is 4. But remember, for the equation of a circle, it's your radius squared. So 4 squared is 16. Okay, next up. Number 5, write the equation of a circle with the center of +3, -4, and an area of 52 pi. So here I go with my circle equation again. And again, I'm going to take my center, so x minus 3, since it's a +3, and a y plus 4, since it's a -4. And area is equal to pi r squared. So I'm going to take area, which is 52 pi, and solve. First thing I'm going to do is divide by pi. And I'll get my radius squared equals 52. Well, remember, it's radius squared. So rather than take the square root to solve for my radius, I'm just going to write 52 as my answer. Okay, so this one says write the equation of a circle with a center at +2, -1, and a point on the circle at 2, 5. So just going to set up my little circle outline like I always do. And since it gives me my center, I'm going to do x minus 2 and y plus 1, the opposites. But I'm going to need to use the distance formula. And remember, the distance formula is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1. Oops, y2 minus y1 squared. So let's go ahead and figure that in. And that is going to give us our radius, right? Because our center is at a positive 2, negative 1, and then a point on our circle is 2, 5. All right, so that's going to give us our radius. So our radius is going to be equal to 2 minus 2 squared, right? x2, x1, y1, y2. Oh, goodness. Okay. x2, y2, x1, y1 plus negative 1 minus 5 squared. Well, 2 minus 2 is 0. So I have 0 squared plus negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 squared. And I end up with 0 plus 36. And it's the square root of 36, which equals 6. So my radius is equal to 6. But remember, for here, I have to square it. So 36 is my radius, 6 squared. All right, moving on to the next page. It's not too long of a study guide this time, which is nice. Write the equation of a circle in standard form by completing the square, given the equation. So I'm going to go ahead and just set up my parentheses like I always do. So x, y, and then equals. And next up, I'm going to separate my x's. So I'm going to take x squared minus 6x and then plus a number that I'm going to insert here. Okay, and then I'm going to take my y's. So y squared minus 2y plus a number I'm going to insert here. All of this equals negative 6. And I got negative 6 because I wanted to move it over. So I subtracted 6 from both sides. Okay, so negative 6. Now for this term, I'm going to do negative 6 divided by 2 and square it, right? We're completing the square, which will give me negative 3 squared, which is 9. So in goes a 9, and since I added 9 to this side, sorry, there's a gardener out there, I have to add 9 to this side. All right, kind of the same idea here. I'm going to do negative 2 divided by 2 and square it, which is going to give me negative 1 squared, which is 1. So I insert a 1 here and a 1 here. I add all of those together, and I end up with a positive 4. And then what I do is I look to my b term, and I see that that's negative of my x's. So I know this is going to be negative. And I take the square root of this number, which is 3. Right? I look to this term, and I see that it's negative. So I know that there will be a negative here, and I take the square root of 1, which is 1. Okay, so next up, I have x squared minus 8x plus a blank, so same idea, and then y squared plus 4y plus a blank equals, remember I'm moving this to the other side of the equal sign, so minus 11, negative 11. Okay, oops, I'm going to just fill in a minus here because I see that that's negative, so in goes a negative squared plus y, and I'll look to my y. Oh, that b term is positive, so plus squared, and then whatever my radius squared is. We'll figure that out in a sec. So again, I'm going to take negative 8, I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it. All right, negative 4 squared is 16. So in goes a 16, and over here I have to add a 16. All right, and then down here, 4 divided by 2 squared. 2 squared equals 4. In goes a 4. Over here goes a 4 as well to keep it balanced. All right, I add all these together and I get 9. And then I look, 16, square root of 16 is 4, so in goes a 4. Square root of 4 is 2, in goes a 2. Okie doke. Now, we're going to do something similar but with parabolas. So, write the equation of a parabola in standard form by completing the square, given the equation. Determine if the equation will have a maximum or a minimum, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex. Okay, so we're just going to go y equals x squared minus 10x plus a blank that goes here. And we're going to kind of put this in parentheses and scooch this negative 20 out. All right, so it's kind of scooched over to the side. It hasn't crossed over the equal sign. That's why it's still negative 20. We're going to do the same thing we were doing in the circles. So that middle term divided by 2 and then squared. So negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. So in goes a positive 25. This time, since I'm on the same side of the equal sign, it's going to be a minus 25. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and go y equals x. I'm going to look to my b term again, which is negative. And I'm going to take the square root of 25, which is 5. I'm going to combine those two together and get negative 45. Okay, so I see that it opens upwards, which means that the lowest point it can go would be something right down here. So it would have a minimum. The vertex, remember we look at this number and this number. If it's in parentheses, we take the opposite, so it's going to be positive 5. And then since this is outside of parentheses, it remains negative 45. The axis of symmetry is equal to whatever the x value of your vertex is. So x equals 5. All right, let's do it again with this one. So we can go ahead and write y equals, and we'll have our parentheses x squared, and we just kind of have an idea of what it's going to look like. We also can see that there's a negative out here, so that means it's going to open downwards, which means its point, the highest it can go, so it's going to have a maximum. All right, let's go ahead and maneuver this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scooch out that negative 14, scooch it over, right? And then I'm going to divide out this negative. So I'm going to divide these by negative 1. So out comes that negative 1. And I'm going to be left with an x squared plus 4x plus a number that I'm going to insert here. All right, so same numbers. I just divided out the negative. All right, and now it comes down to this b term. All right, so 4 divided by 2 and squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Squared is 4. So in goes a 4. All right, and you're going to, even though this says plus 4, you're still going to add 4 here. Because remember, if I were to distribute this back in, sorry, I'm going to wait for the loud gardener to pass. Did you know in Hollywood that they pay gardeners like a couple $100 to stop while they film? I can see why. Okay, so you would distribute that and that would become a negative 4. So that's why I'm doing a positive 4 here. Because remember, since it's on the same side of the equal sign, We want to keep it balanced. Okay, so we'll combine these two and we'll get negative 10. And then for this term, I look to my b term, which is a positive. So in here, I'm going to put a negative, and I'll take the square root of this term, which is 2. What I can't forget is that I divided out this negative 1. So I'm going to put a negative in front of this. All right, so then my vertex, I take the opposite of this, which is a positive 2. And then my y value stays the same, so negative 10. My axis of symmetry is whatever my x value is, so x equals positive 2. All right, last page. Okay, write the equation of a parabola in standard form that is upward facing and has a vertex of negative 2, positive 3. You can think of it as your xy or your hk. So we're going to do y equals parentheses x plus 2, because remember when it's in parentheses, it's the opposite value, squared, plus 3. Outside of parentheses, it can remain the same value. All right, so graph the following transformation showing each transformation in the function. There must be 5 points for the graph. State the vertex and the axis of symmetry. All right, what I want you guys to do is just the parent function first. So f of x, remember, it just starts as x squared. So 0, 0. If we put 1 in, we get 1 squared is 1, right? So x, y, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. All right, so we got 0. We got 1. Positive 2 squared is 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. And negative 2 squared is 4. So we're just going to graph those points. Over negative 2, up 4, and over positive, over negative 2, up 4, over positive 2. Okay. Okay. All right, so that is our parent function. Now, I guess I will switch colors here. We're just going to graph, see that it's facing downward, right? And we're just going to graph based on our vertex. And that's all I want you guys to do. We don't need to overcomplicate it. So it's going to be facing downward. This is going to be negative 2, positive 3, and opening downwards. Okay, so our vertex we know is the opposite, so negative 2, and what this is, positive 3. Our axis of symmetry is whatever our x value is, so x equals negative 2. All right, this one says factor and solve the following. Well, let's move everything over. We're going to subtract 2x, and we're going to subtract 22 and subtract 22. We are going to end up with x squared plus 4x minus 45, all equals 0. So eventually, because it says factor and solve, we're going to figure out what this is. So we're just going to do our x factor. Negative 45 will go to the top, and the middle brother 4 will go to the bottom, while the factors are a positive 9 and a negative 5. So I have x plus 9 and x minus 5. And remember, this is simple because there's just a 1 right here. in front of this x squared. Our a term is a 1. Equals 0. So we're going to do x minus 9 equals, x plus 9 equals 0. We'll subtract 9 from both sides, and we'll get x equals negative 9. So one of our answers is negative 9. And then over here, we'll have x minus 5 equals 0. So we'll add 5 to both sides, and we'll get x equals 5. Okay, factor and solve the following. Well, we can just take the square root and take the square root and get x equals plus or minus 15. The square root of 225 is 15. Factor and solve the following. Well, again, we're going to subtract 3x squared, so minus 3x squared. We're moving everything over, plus 5x plus 5x minus 5 minus 5. So we will end up with 7x squared minus 10x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so now is where we're going to have to split the middle term. We're going to multiply our first and our last term here. Okay, so 7 times negative 8 is negative 56. We bring our middle brother to the bottom, which is negative 10. And we end up with negative 14x and a positive 4x. Those would be the factors. That's the tricky part though, right? Thinking of the factors. And now what we're going to do is we're going to return back to this. So 7x squared, we're going to group it with one of these. I'm going to group it with minus 14x. And then I'm going to take my other term, plus 4x, and then group it with my last term, negative 8. Okay, so I'm factoring out the GCF of these two chunks. So out here, I can divide a 7x, and I'll end up with x minus 2. And here I can divide out a 4, and I'll end up with x minus 2. Well, my parentheses are matching, so I know that I have 7x plus 4, and then x minus 2 equals 0. There it is factored. Now I need to solve. So I'll do this one first. X minus 2 equals 0. Plus 2, x equals a positive 2. This one's a bit trickier. So 7x plus 4 equals 0. I'll subtract 4 and subtract 4. I'll end up with 7x equals negative 4. And then I have to divide by 7 and divide by 7. And I end up with x also equals negative 4 over 7. And you're done. That is it for this study guide. Have a good one, guys.